Hello, this is Ben, and this is your Belmont Math and Science Center tutor tip. So today we're going to be looking at using the units of production method to determine our depreciation expense. So we've done videos where we've looked at the straight line depreciation and the double declining balance method, but the units of production is very different than these two methods. It is different, but I think once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty easy to use. So why don't we jump in, and if you need any help with straight line depreciation or double declining balance, we do have videos that I've created that you can look up and help you out with that. But moving on to units of production. So the first thing we need to look at is our formula. So the first thing we need to discover in our units of production is our depreciation rate. And we do that by determining our cost minus our salvage value. So this is very similar to what we would do if we were doing a straight line or double declining balance problem. The different part is that instead of dividing it by its useful life, we're going to divide it by its estimated production value. So what this estimated production means is that if a piece of equipment, let's say it was a shovel, and we said that it could shovel 10,000 units of gold before it broke. We would look at that and we would say its estimated production value is 10,000 units of gold. And once we know that, we can use that to divide the cost minus salvage value to get our depreciation rate. Once we have that, we can figure out our depreciation expense for every year, every period, by multiplying that depreciation rate times the units produced in that year. So if we had, we're saying 2,000 units of gold that were produced during the year, we would multiply 2,000 times the depreciation rate. It's a little bit hard to understand at first, as I mentioned, because it is so different, but I think once we get into this practice problem, it'll become much simpler for you. So why don't we start with the practice problem? We have company X bought a piece of equipment for $17,000. The estimated production during the equipment's life is 10,000 units, and the salvage value is 2,000. We have the units produced by year. Year 1, we have 2,000 units. Year 2, 3,000. Year 3, 3,500. And year 4, 1,500 units. And then it asks us what our journal entry should be for year 3. So the first thing that we want to do is determine our depreciation rate. So we have our cost, which is 17,000, and we're going to subtract that from our salvage value, which is 2,000, which it gave us in the problem. And then we're going to divide that by our estimated production, which is 10,000 units right there. Alright, so we have that formula. Now we're going to let Excel calculate this for us. And that will give us $1.50. So what that value is saying is for every unit this equipment produces, we need to depreciate the piece of equipment by $1.50. So if it produced 10 units, then that means we would need to depreciate that equipment by $15. Alright? So the next thing that we want to do is determine our depreciation expense using our depreciation rate that we just found and multiplying that by the units produced. So we're going to start with this chart because this chart is a good way of helping us determine and visualize what is going on in depreciation every year. So the first thing we need to do is put in our book value, which is 17,000. You have that right there. And next we're going to do our depreciation expense for year 1. Alright, so we know our depreciation rate is $1.50, so we can put that in there. And then we have our year 1 produced units is 2,000, so we're going to put in 2,000, and boom, we get $3,000 of depreciation expense. Our accumulated depreciation is simply 3,000 because it is only year 1. We don't have any other depreciation expenses. And our book value, as always, is our beginning book value minus our depreciation expense for that year. So that brings us to 14,000. So our year 2 beginning book value will be 14,000. since it was the ending of year 1. And now we have to calculate our depreciation expense for year 2. So again, we're going to start with our depreciation rate. Then we're going to multiply it by our units produced in year 2, which is 3,000. That'll get us 4,500 for our depreciation expense. We will add up year 1 and year 2 to get our accumulated depreciation, and then we will do our book value minus our depreciation expense to get us our book value for the end of year 2. And that in turn will be our beginning book value of year 3. We're going to figure out our depreciation expense for year 3, doing the same thing. $1.50 times 3,500 in this case, because that's how many units we're producing for year 3 over here. That gets us $5,250. When we add our depreciation expenses up, we get our accumulated depreciation of $12,750. And when we do 9,500 minus 5,250, we get 4,250 for our book value of the end of the year 3. Now for year 4, we're going to do the same thing. 1.5 times 1,500, and that'll get us $2,250, excuse me. Again, we're going to add up all these depreciation expenses, and that will get us our total accumulated depreciation. We will do our book value at the beginning of the year minus our depreciation expense, and that gives us a $2,000 book value at the end of year 4, which is exactly what we want because our salvage value is $2,000. We've used up 10,000 units. If you calculate 2,000 plus 3,000 plus 3,500 plus 1,500 is 10,000 units. So we've used up our piece of equipment because it only had 10,000 units of life. And so it makes sense that our book value at the end of year 4 is the same as our salvage value, which is $2,000. So moving on from this chart, we can look at the journal entry for year number 3. As I've mentioned in the other 2 videos, our account titles will always remain the same no matter what depreciation method you're using. We'll have depreciation expense as our debit, and as our credit, we will have accumulated depreciation. This does not change even in units of production. So our depreciation expense for year 3 was $5,250. There we go. And that will be the same for our account title and accumulated depreciation. So again, we could have done that for year 1. It would have been 3,000. Year 2 would have been 4,500, and year 4 would have been 2,250. So unlike double declining balance, where you had to do something different for your final year, you don't have to do that in units of production. You simply follow how many units have been produced in each year. And if it equals your book value at the end of the year equals your salvage value, that should mean that you've used up all of your units of production during the piece of equipment's lifespan. So like in this case, we used 10,000 units and the equipment's life was 10,000 units. If you guys have any questions, I suggest you email your professor or come into the Math and Science Center where we are more than happy to help you. I hope this video helps you guys. Good luck!